What if the greatest mystery in human history is not whether ancient civilizations existed, but how they knew things they were never supposed to know? Across deserts, jungles, mountains, and forgotten islands, archaeologists continue to uncover impossible artifacts. Stones weighing hundreds of tons cut with laser-like precision. Ancient machines capable of predicting eclipses 2,000 years before modern science. Metals that refuse to rust after millennia. Concrete stronger than anything we can produce today. And buried deep beneath all of it lies a question that becomes harder to ignore with every new discovery. What if the ancients were not primitive at all? What if entire chapters of human knowledge were lost, erased by floods, wars, collapsing empires, or something far older? And what if the legends were true? Because hidden inside the oldest texts ever discovered, the Sumerian tablets of Mesopotamia, there are stories of beings who descended from the heavens long before recorded history, the Anunnaki, gods to some, teachers to others. According to ancient accounts, they brought knowledge of astronomy, engineering, mathematics, and civilization itself. Mainstream historians dismiss these stories as mythology, but some researchers believe the myths may preserve fragments of a forgotten truth. Tonight, we travel through the ruins of impossible civilizations, through mysteries official history still cannot fully explain, and through technologies so advanced they seem to belong to another age entirely. Before we begin, write in the comments where you are watching from tonight. I always love seeing how far these stories travel across the world. And if you enjoy deep documentaries about ancient mysteries, forgotten civilizations, and unexplained history, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future journeys into the unknown. Now, lower the lights, get comfortable, and let us begin our descent into the lost technologies of the ancient world. High in the Bolivian Andes, nearly 13,000 feet above sea level, lies a place that should not exist. The winds there are cold and relentless. The air is thin enough to make breathing difficult. Nothing about the environment feels welcoming to civilization. And yet, thousands of years ago, someone built one of the most baffling archaeological sites on Earth. Its name is Puma Punku. At first glance, the ruins appear chaotic. Massive stone blocks lie scattered across the ground as though thrown there by giants. Some weigh over 100 tons. But the closer you look, the stranger everything becomes. The stones are not rough or primitive. They are precise, perfectly cut right angles, smooth surfaces polished almost like glass. Intricate grooves and geometric patterns carved with astonishing consistency. Some blocks fit together so tightly that even modern engineers struggle to explain how such precision was achieved without advanced tools. The most famous stones at Puma Punku are the so-called H blocks. Each one is nearly identical to the others, carved with exact dimensions and mathematical symmetry. They resemble components from a gigantic construction set, as though the entire complex was assembled using interchangeable pieces long before the concept of industrial manufacturing existed. And then comes the biggest mystery of all, the stone itself. Much of Puma Punku was built using andesite and diorite, volcanic rocks so hard that modern builders typically require diamond-tipped tools to cut them efficiently. According to conventional history, the Tiwanaku civilization built these structures sometime around the 6th century. Yet the Tiwanaku possessed no iron tools, no steel, no cranes, no wheels for heavy transport, no beast capable of hauling 100-ton blocks through mountainous terrain. Official explanations suggest enormous manpower, stone hammers, ropes, and endless patience. But experiments attempting to recreate the construction methods have repeatedly failed to match the extraordinary precision of the original site. Modern stonemasons equipped with power tools often admit something unsettling after examining Puma Punku closely. They do not know how it was done. Some researchers propose that ancient builders may have used plant-based acids capable of softening stone temporarily. Indigenous legends speak of mysterious plants that could make rock behave like clay. Others speculate about advanced acoustic techniques, where vibration somehow assisted in shaping or moving massive stones. And then there are the more controversial theories involving lost civilizations, or visitors from elsewhere. Ancient astronaut researchers often point toward Puma Punku as evidence that humanity may have once received outside assistance. They argue that the precision is simply too advanced for the accepted timeline of human development. Mainstream archaeology strongly rejects these conclusions, yet the mystery remains unresolved, because no matter how many theories are proposed, the stones themselves continue to sit silently atop the Andes. Impossible, ancient, and unanswered. And Puma Punku is not alone. Across the ocean, in Lebanon, another site pushes the limits of belief even further. There, beneath the Roman temple of Jupiter at Baalbek, lie three of the largest stone blocks ever used in construction anywhere on Earth. The trilithon. Each block weighs roughly 800 tons. To understand how absurd that number is, imagine the weight of more than 600 modern cars compressed into a single stone. These blocks were not only cut from a quarry nearly a kilometer away, but somehow transported uphill and placed with remarkable precision. Even the Romans, among the greatest engineers in history, never moved stones this large in any of their other structures, which raises an uncomfortable question. If the Romans did not place them, then who did? The deeper archaeologists dig into ancient history, the stranger the story becomes. Because scattered across the world are traces of knowledge that seem to appear far too early. Knowledge that surfaces, disappears, and then mysteriously reappears centuries later, as though humanity keeps forgetting and rediscovering the same technologies over and over again. And nowhere is that pattern more disturbing than in ancient Mesopotamia. In 1936, while excavating near Baghdad, German archaeologist Wilhelm König discovered a small clay jar unlike anything he had ever seen before. Inside the jar was a copper cylinder. Through its center ran an iron rod sealed with bitumen. At first glance, it seemed insignificant, but König noticed something strange about the arrangement. It looked remarkably similar to a modern battery. Later experiments confirmed the possibility, when researchers filled replicas of the jar with acidic liquids like vinegar or grape juice. The devices produced electrical current. Ancient electricity, more than 2,000 years before Edison. The implications were staggering. Why would ancient civilizations need batteries? Some believe they used them for electroplating, coating objects in gold using electrical currents. Others speculate that priests used hidden electrical devices inside temples to create miracles that convinced worshippers they were witnessing divine power. And in Egypt, strange carvings inside the Temple of Dendera have only fueled the mystery further. The reliefs appear to show enormous bulb-shaped objects connected by cable-like structures. Inside the bulbs are serpent-like forms often interpreted as symbols of energy or light. Egyptologists insist the images are purely symbolic representations of mythology, but alternative researchers are not convinced. Because inside many Egyptian tombs there are no soot marks from torches, no smoke damage, no evidence of open flame. Yet the walls are covered in intricate paintings deep underground, where sunlight could never reach. So how did the artists see? That question still lingers in the darkness of those ancient chambers. For centuries, historians believed ancient humanity advanced slowly. Stone tools, bronze weapons, simple agriculture, primitive minds slowly crawling toward civilization. But the deeper we investigate the ancient world, the more that timeline begins to fracture. Because hidden beneath layers of dust, salt water, and collapsed empires are traces of knowledge that seem wildly out of place. And perhaps no discovery illustrates this better than a corroded lump of bronze recovered from the bottom of the sea. In the spring of 1901, sponge divers working near the tiny Greek island of Antikythera descended into the cold waters of the Mediterranean, searching for natural sponges among underwater cliffs. Instead, they found something astonishing: a shipwreck. Scattered across the seabed were marble statues, amphorae, coins, jewelry, and fragments of ancient cargo from a Roman vessel that had sunk more than 2,000 years earlier. The divers carefully brought the treasures to the surface one by one. Among them was a strange object nobody paid much attention to at first: a greenish mass of corroded bronze no larger than a shoebox. It looked broken, useless, unimportant. But months later, while examining the artifact inside the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, researcher Valerios Stais noticed something protruding from the corrosion: gear teeth, tiny, perfectly cut mechanical gears. At first, scholars assumed it had to be contamination from a later period. Some kind of medieval clock mechanism accidentally mixed into the wreck. Because according to accepted history, no one in the ancient world possessed technology remotely sophisticated enough to create complex gear systems. But the dates were undeniable. The ship had sunk around 60 BCE, which meant the mechanism was already ancient when it went underwater. As scientists slowly cleaned the fragments, the impossible truth began to emerge. This was not a decorative object, it was a machine built over 2,000 years ago. Today we call it the Antikythera Mechanism, and many historians consider it the world's first analog computer. Inside the corroded bronze fragments were at least 30 interlocking gears arranged with extraordinary precision. Tiny inscriptions covered the surfaces, functioning almost like an instruction manual. X-ray scans later revealed layers of hidden mechanisms packed together with engineering sophistication no one believed existed in antiquity. And then researchers realized what the device actually did. It predicted the movements of celestial bodies. The Antikythera Mechanism could calculate the position of the sun and moon. It tracked lunar phases. It predicted eclipses years in advance using the Saros cycle, an astronomical pattern requiring highly advanced observational knowledge. Even more astonishing, the mechanism compensated for the moon's irregular orbit using a differential gear system, something officially believed to have been invented more than 1,000 years later. The user would turn a small crank on the side, and the gears inside would rotate in precise mathematical relationships. Dials on the front displayed astronomical data. Spiral calendars on the back tracked complex cycles spanning decades. It was, in every meaningful sense, a computer, a mechanical computer built in the ancient world. And that changes everything, because technologies do not appear in isolation. You do not suddenly invent a device this sophisticated without generations of prior engineering knowledge. To create the Antikythera Mechanism, ancient craftsmen needed advanced mathematics, metallurgy, astronomy, precision cutting tools, and a deep understanding of mechanical systems, which raises a disturbing possibility. If this machine existed, what else existed? Ancient writers may provide clues. The Roman philosopher Cicero described devices created by Archimedes capable of simulating the movements of the heavens. He wrote about mechanical planetariums that displayed celestial motion with astonishing accuracy. At the time, historians dismissed many of these descriptions as exaggeration. But after Antikythera, those accounts no longer seem impossible. Perhaps the ancient Mediterranean once contained entire workshops producing scientific instruments far beyond what we imagine. And perhaps those technologies vanished during the collapse of empires. Libraries burned, cities fell, knowledge disappeared, humanity forgot. The Antikythera Mechanism feels less like an invention and more like a surviving fragment from a lost scientific tradition that was almost completely erased from history. And it is not the only example, because while ancient Greece may have built impossible machines, the Middle East forged impossible metal. During the Crusades, European knights encountered weapons unlike anything they had seen before. The blades carried by warriors of the Islamic world sliced through armor with terrifying efficiency. Legends claim these swords could cut silk drifting through the air or split lesser blades in half without losing their edge. These were weapons forged from Damascus steel, and their secret remains one of the greatest mysteries in metallurgy. The blades possessed a beautiful flowing pattern across their surface, wave-like textures resembling moving water. But this pattern was not decorative. It reflected something happening deep inside the structure of the metal itself. Modern scientists examining authentic Damascus blades under electron microscopes made a shocking discovery. The steel contained carbon nanotubes, structures measured in billionths of a meter. Nanotechnology in medieval swords. How ancient blacksmiths achieved this without microscopes, chemistry, or modern industrial equipment remains deeply unclear. The process required exact temperatures, precise cooling rates, and carefully controlled impurities inside the metal. A slight mistake could ruin the blade entirely. For centuries, master smiths guarded the method in secrecy. Then suddenly, the knowledge vanished. By the 18th century, true Damascus steel could no longer be produced. The original process was lost. Modern metallurgists have spent decades trying to recreate it. Some have come close, but no one has perfectly duplicated the legendary blades described in historical records. Once again, humanity seems to have forgotten something it previously knew. And these patterns keep repeating. Lost formulas, lost engineering, lost sciences. As though civilization repeatedly rises, reaches astonishing heights, collapses, and leaves only fragments behind for future generations to puzzle over. Which brings us to another civilization whose stonework still defies explanation. The Inca. High in the mountains of Peru, above the ancient capital of Cusco, stands the fortress of Sacsayhuaman. Massive zigzagging walls stretch across the hillside, built from gigantic stones weighing up to 200 tons each. But what truly astonishes engineers is not the size, it is the precision. Every stone possesses a unique shape with dozens of angles carved specifically to interlock with neighboring blocks. No mortar was used, no cement. The stones fit together so tightly that even a knife blade cannot slide between them. And despite centuries of earthquakes, the walls still stand. Modern buildings around them collapse. The Inca walls survive. The stones move during seismic activity, absorbing shock, then settle back into place. Earthquake-resistant engineering, hundreds of years before modern seismic science. Official history claims the Inca shaped these stones using harder rocks as hammers and endless manual labor. But modern experiments attempting to reproduce the work have struggled enormously. Some blocks would require months or years of carving with primitive tools. And transportation presents an even greater mystery. The Inca had no wheels for transport, no horses, no oxen. So how did they move stones heavier than modern tanks through mountainous terrain? Ancient legends offer strange answers. Stories describe plants capable of softening stone. Other legends speak of sound, vibration, songs used to move massive objects. Most archaeologists dismiss these stories as mythological symbolism, but some researchers wonder whether traces of forgotten techniques survive hidden within oral traditions passed down for centuries. And then there are the oldest stories of all, the stories carved into clay tablets thousands of years before the rise of Greece or Rome. Stories from Sumer, stories about the Anunnaki. According to ancient Mesopotamian texts, the Anunnaki descended from the heavens in humanity's distant past. They were described as powerful beings associated with knowledge, kingship, astronomy, and creation itself. Some interpretations suggest they taught early humans agriculture, mathematics, architecture, and writing. Mainstream historians view the Anunnaki simply as mythological gods within Sumerian religion. But alternative theorists ask a dangerous question. Why do so many ancient civilizations describe divine beings descending from the sky, bringing knowledge to mankind? Why do myths across continents speak of teachers arriving after catastrophic floods? And why do certain ancient achievements appear to emerge suddenly, almost without developmental stages? No one truly knows. But as night deepens around forgotten ruins and impossible monuments continue staring silently across the centuries, the ancient world begins to feel less distant and far more mysterious than we were ever taught. The Byzantine Empire survived for nearly 1,000 years longer than the Western Roman Empire. Empires rose and collapsed around it. Kingdoms vanished. Entire civilizations disappeared into dust. Yet Constantinople endured, and many historians believe one terrifying weapon played a major role in keeping the empire alive. A weapon so secretive that even today no one knows its exact formula. It was called Greek fire. The first time enemies witnessed it, they thought they were seeing supernatural power. The year was 674 CE. Arab fleets surrounded Constantinople after years of expansion across the Middle East and North Africa. The Byzantine capital stood isolated, its defenses stretched to the limit. If the city fell, the history of Europe and Christianity itself might have changed forever. Then the Byzantines unleashed something the world had never seen. From bronze tubes mounted on the front of their warships erupted streams of burning liquid flame. Fire blasted across the sea itself, igniting enemy vessels instantly. Sailors screamed as flames spread unnaturally over the surface of the water. And the worst part, water could not extinguish it. The more they tried to douse the flames, the more violently the fire spread. Ships became floating infernos. Entire crews leapt into the sea only to find the fire following them across the water. Panic consumed the Arab fleet. The siege collapsed. Constantinople survived. For centuries afterward, Greek fire became one of the most feared weapons in the world, and its formula was guarded more carefully than almost any secret in human history. Only a tiny number of trusted individuals knew how to produce it. The knowledge passed directly through imperial circles under threat of death. Workshops manufacturing the substance operated under extreme security. Even when enemy nations captured Byzantine ships and flame-projecting devices, they could never recreate the weapon itself. Because the true secret was not the machine, it was the chemical composition. Modern historians believe Greek fire likely combined crude oil, sulfur, pine resin, and quicklime. Some theories suggest the mixture generated intense exothermic reactions when exposed to water, explaining why attempts to extinguish it only worsened the flames. Others believe additional unknown compounds were involved. The truth is, nobody knows for certain. And that uncertainty matters because Byzantine engineers created advanced chemical warfare more than 1,000 years before modern chemistry formally existed. They understood combustion, pressure systems, fluid projection, and battlefield psychology with astonishing sophistication. Once again, ancient knowledge appears far ahead of its time. And then, just like so many other technologies, it vanished. When Constantinople finally fell to the Ottoman Empire in 1453, the secret disappeared forever. The workshops were destroyed. The masters killed or scattered. The formula lost. Humanity forgot. And perhaps nowhere is that pattern of forgotten mastery more visible than in ancient India. In the center of Delhi stands a massive iron pillar over 23 feet tall and weighing more than 6 tons. At first glance, it appears simple, but this column should not exist because it does something modern metallurgy still struggles to explain. It refuses to rust. For over 1,600 years, the iron pillar of Delhi has stood exposed to rain, heat, humidity, monsoon seasons, and pollution. Yet almost no corrosion appears on its surface. Modern iron exposed to those conditions would decay rapidly. But not this pillar. Researchers discovered that ancient Indian metallurgists somehow produced extraordinarily pure iron containing precise phosphorus levels that created a microscopic protective layer across the metal surface. This passive film shielded the column from oxidation for over a millennium and a half. The level of metallurgical control required to achieve this is astonishing. Ancient craftsmen possessed no modern furnaces, no industrial chemistry, no electronic temperature controls, and yet somehow they created corrosion-resistant iron superior in some ways to many modern alloys. The pillar forces historians to confront an uncomfortable reality. Ancient metallurgy may have been far more advanced than previously believed, but the mysteries do not stop there. Because while India mastered metal, Rome mastered stone, or more specifically, concrete. Today, modern concrete structures often begin deteriorating within decades. Bridges crack, buildings weaken, steel reinforcement corrodes. Yet Roman concrete structures have survived for nearly 2,000 years, and some continue growing stronger over time. The Pantheon in Rome still possesses the largest unreinforced concrete dome ever built. Despite earthquakes, wars, and centuries of weather, it remains standing almost perfectly intact. Roman harbors submerged underwater for centuries continue resisting erosion better than many modern marine structures. How? The answer lies in volcanic ash. Roman engineers mixed lime with a special volcanic material called pozzolana. When seawater penetrated the concrete, chemical reactions slowly formed interlocking mineral crystals inside microscopic cracks. Incredibly, the concrete healed itself. The ocean strengthened it instead of destroying it. Modern scientists studying Roman concrete through electron microscopy discovered structures known as aluminous tobermorite crystals, forming naturally over centuries. These crystals increased durability and prevented catastrophic cracking. In simple terms, Roman concrete evolved over time. It adapted. Modern researchers now attempt to recreate these ancient formulas to build more sustainable and durable infrastructure, which means that in some areas, humanity is not surpassing the ancients. We are trying to catch back up to them, and perhaps nowhere is human ingenuity more mysterious than on one of the most isolated islands on Earth. Rapa Nui, Easter Island. Nearly 4,000 kilometers from the nearest continent, hundreds of gigantic stone statues stare silently across the landscape. The Moai. Some weigh more than 80 tons. How the island's ancient inhabitants moved them remains one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. Traditional theories claim the statues were dragged horizontally using logs and ropes. But the island possessed limited timber resources, especially during the height of statue construction. Then researchers proposed a shocking alternative. What if the statues walked? Local legends had always claimed the Moai moved by themselves through spiritual power called mana. For generations, outsiders dismissed the stories as metaphorical folklore. But experiments changed everything. Using ropes and coordinated pulling techniques, researchers successfully moved replica Moai upright, rocking them side to side in a walking motion. The statues literally appeared to walk forward. Suddenly, the ancient legends no longer sounded impossible. The shape of the Moai supports the theory. Their centers of gravity allow controlled rocking. Their bases are curved in ways perfectly suited for upright movement. And along ancient roads across the island, archaeologists discovered fallen statues lying face down, exactly how they would fall if transported vertically. Once again, myth and engineering seem to overlap. And as strange as all of this already sounds, the final mysteries may be the most disturbing of all. Because hidden in remote caves near the border of Tibet and China lies a story many researchers refuse to even discuss seriously. The Drapa stones. According to controversial accounts, explorers discovered hundreds of stone discs buried alongside unusually small skeletons with oversized skulls deep inside mountain caves. The discs supposedly contained microscopic spiral inscriptions, describing beings who descended from the sky thousands of years ago after crashing on Earth. Most historians dismiss the story entirely. There are inconsistencies, missing records, disputed evidence, and yet fragments of the mystery persist. Photographs of strange disks, local legends about sky people, ancient cave art depicting circular objects descending from above. Perhaps it is all fiction, or perhaps somewhere beneath layers of myth and distortion lies a forgotten truth humanity is not prepared to face. Because the deeper we travel into ancient history, the more one terrifying possibility begins to emerge. What if ancient civilization was not the beginning? What if it was the aftermath of something older, something lost? There is a pattern hidden inside nearly every ancient mystery we have explored tonight. Knowledge appears, civilizations rise, impossible structures are built, advanced technologies emerge centuries, sometimes millennia, before they should exist. And then suddenly, everything disappears, almost as though humanity repeatedly forgets itself. Historians often describe ancient people as primitive because they lacked electricity grids, satellites, or computers. But perhaps intelligence should not be measured only by the technologies we use today, because the ancients mastered things we still struggle to replicate: stonework that survives earthquakes for centuries, metallurgy capable of resisting corrosion for millennia, astronomical calculations precise enough to predict eclipses thousands of years in advance, chemical weapons centuries ahead of their time, and maybe most mysterious of all, they left stories repeated across civilizations, separated by oceans and continents. Stories about teachers descending from the sky, about gods bringing forbidden knowledge, about great floods destroying earlier worlds, about humanity inheriting fragments of wisdom from civilizations that came before. The Sumerians called them the Anunnaki. According to ancient Mesopotamian tablets, these beings came from the heavens long before recorded dynasties ruled Earth. They were associated with cosmic order, kingship, astronomy, engineering, and creation itself. Some texts describe them descending to Earth from the stars. Others claim they shaped humanity for labor and taught early civilization agriculture, mathematics, and writing. Mainstream historians interpret these accounts symbolically, but alternative researchers ask an uncomfortable question. What if mythology preserves distorted memories of real events? Because ancient myths are often treated as fantasy until archaeology proves otherwise. For centuries, historians believed Troy was fictional until its ruins were discovered. The same happened with ancient floods, once dismissed as pure legend until geological evidence revealed catastrophic flooding events across multiple regions of the world. So what if other myths contain hidden truths as well? Not literal gods, perhaps, but echoes, fragments, memories transformed by thousands of years of retelling. The ancient Sumerians possessed astonishing astronomical knowledge. They understood planetary cycles with remarkable precision. Some researchers claim their star maps contain information difficult to explain for such an early civilization. And then there is the strange obsession ancient cultures shared with the heavens. The pyramids aligned to stars, megalithic temples tracking solstices, cities positioned according to celestial movements. Astronomy was not merely science to the ancients. It was sacred, as though the sky itself held the key to survival. Some theories suggest this obsession may have originated after a global catastrophe in humanity's distant past. A flood, a comet impact, a collapse so severe it erased nearly everything except fragments carried forward by survivors. Perhaps ancient civilizations were rebuilding from ruins older than themselves. Perhaps knowledge survived only in pieces, preserved by priesthoods, secret traditions, and oral histories. And over generations, those fragments transformed into myths about gods and heavenly teachers. This idea may sound impossible, But so did the Antikythera Mechanism before it was discovered. So did ancient batteries. So did self-healing Roman concrete. So did earthquake-resistant Inca walls. History keeps reminding us that the ancient world was far more sophisticated than we once believed. And perhaps the greatest mistake modern civilization makes is assuming progress always moves forward in a straight line. Because history is fragile. Libraries burn, empires collapse, knowledge disappears. Even today, humanity depends on delicate systems most people barely understand. Satellites, power grids, digital networks, global supply chains. If modern civilization suffered a catastrophic collapse, how much of our knowledge would truly survive 1,000 years? Would future archaeologists understand our technology? Or would they stare at fragments of silicon chips and shattered skyscrapers with the same confusion we feel when looking at Puma Punku or Baalbek? Perhaps one day our own civilization will become another mystery buried beneath the earth. Another puzzle future generations struggle to explain. And maybe that realization is the most unsettling part of all. Because the ancient world is not silent, its ruins still whisper. Through shattered temples, through impossible monuments, through forgotten mechanisms hidden beneath the sea. The whispers tell us something simple but deeply uncomfortable. Humanity may not know its own history nearly as well as it thinks. Tonight we traveled across mountains, deserts, jungles, oceans, and ruins, searching for traces of lost knowledge. We explored technologies official history still cannot fully explain. We followed legends of forgotten civilizations and heavenly beings through the oldest stories ever written. But the deeper we searched for answers, the more questions we found. And perhaps that is why ancient mysteries continue to fascinate us. Because somewhere beneath the myths, beneath the collapsed cities and broken monuments, there remains a possibility impossible to fully dismiss. That long before our modern world existed, someone else may have known far more than we do now. And somewhere out there, hidden beneath sand, jungle, ice, or ocean floor, their secrets may still be waiting to be found. Good night. For thousands of years, humanity has stood among ruins, asking the same question. How? How did ancient people move stones heavier than tanks without machines? How did they calculate eclipses without telescopes? How did they create metals modern science still struggles to reproduce? And perhaps most importantly, why does so much ancient knowledge seem to appear suddenly, as though handed down rather than slowly discovered? Maybe the answer is simpler than we think, or maybe it is stranger than we can imagine, because history is written by survivors, and survivors rarely understand the full story of the world that existed before them. Imagine standing at the end of a civilization, not at its peak, not during its golden age, but during its collapse. The skies darken, crops fail, cities burn, oceans rise, trade routes vanish, libraries turn to ash. Entire generations die before passing on what they know. In only a few decades, knowledge accumulated over centuries could disappear almost completely. Engineers vanish, scientists vanish, teachers vanish, and what remains? Fragments, symbols carved into stone, stories whispered around fires, myths. Perhaps that is what ancient mythology truly is. Not fantasy, but damaged memory, a shattered reflection of real events distorted by time. The Sumerians spoke of catastrophic floods sent by the gods. The Greeks told of Atlantis sinking beneath the sea. Hindu texts describe previous ages of civilization destroyed in cycles of cosmic catastrophe. The Maya believed worlds existed before our own. Even the Bible preserves flood traditions older than itself. Civilizations separated by oceans somehow carried eerily similar memories. Why? Some researchers believe humanity may have inherited knowledge from a prehistoric civilization, destroyed long before conventional history begins. A civilization advanced not necessarily in the same way as ours, but advanced differently. Perhaps they mastered stone instead of steel, astronomy instead of electronics, acoustics instead of combustion, or perhaps they understood natural forces modern science has barely begun exploring. There are strange clues everywhere. Massive underground cities in Turkey capable of sheltering tens of thousands of people. Ancient maps allegedly showing coastlines hidden beneath Antarctic ice. Megalithic sites align perfectly with celestial events requiring generations of observation. And then there are the structures themselves. The Great Pyramid of Giza contains mathematical relationships so precise that some researchers argue they could not have happened accidentally. Its alignment to true north is accurate within a tiny fraction of a degree, more precise than many modern buildings. How did ancient builders achieve this without modern instruments? Official explanations say patience, observation, and remarkable human ingenuity. And perhaps that is true. But the scale of ancient achievement continues to stretch belief, especially when so many civilizations seem to emerge already possessing advanced knowledge from the very beginning. The Sumerians appeared suddenly in Mesopotamia around 6,000 years ago with writing, astronomy, mathematics, irrigation systems, and organized government already developed. Historians still debate where much of this knowledge originated. The Egyptians built the pyramids early in their civilization's history, not at its technological peak. The Maya developed astonishing calendars and astronomical systems deep within dense jungles without metal tools or wheeled transport. Again and again, history presents the same mystery, civilizations awakening almost overnight. And somewhere in the center of these mysteries stand the ancient gods, the Anunnaki. To mainstream scholars, they are symbolic deities representing cosmic order and natural forces. But alternative theories transformed them into something else entirely. Ancient visitors, sky beings, teachers from another world. Much of this interpretation comes from controversial readings of Sumerian texts popularized during the 20th century. According to these theories, the Anunnaki came from a distant planet called Nibiru and genetically altered early humans. There is no scientific evidence supporting these claims. Yet the idea captured imaginations worldwide because it touched something deeper. A feeling that ancient history contains missing chapters, that perhaps humanity's past is larger, stranger, and more complicated than we realize. And maybe the fascination persists because modern civilization senses its own fragility. We assume our world is permanent because it surrounds us every day. But every empire in history believed the same thing. Rome believed itself eternal. The Maya believed their cities would stand forever. The builders of forgotten temples probably felt the same certainty we do now, and still they vanished. One day, future civilizations may excavate our ruins the same way we excavate ancient ones. They may discover collapsed skyscrapers buried beneath sediment, fragments of satellites, broken circuits, corroded machines, and perhaps they too will misunderstand what they find. Perhaps they will invent myths about us. Perhaps they will wonder whether our technologies were gifts from gods. History has a way of turning reality into legend, and legend into mystery. So maybe the greatest lesson hidden inside ancient ruins is not that aliens built civilizations, nor that supernatural beings guided humanity. Maybe the lesson is something quieter. That knowledge is fragile, civilization is fragile, and memory itself is fragile. Everything humanity creates can disappear. Everything can be forgotten, except the questions. The questions survive. They echo through abandoned temples and buried cities. They whisper through broken monuments and impossible artifacts. Questions that refuse to die. Who were we? What did we know? And how much of our own story has already been lost? As the night deepens and the ancient world fades once more into silence, Perhaps the greatest mystery is not whether the ancients possessed incredible technologies. The evidence suggests they did. The real mystery is how many times humanity has already risen and fallen before our own age began. Sleep well. Long before the pyramids of Egypt rose from the desert, before the first kings of Babylon ruled Mesopotamia, before Greece, Rome, or even the earliest dynasties of China, there were the Sumerians, and according to many historians, they should not have existed when they did. Because Sumer appeared suddenly, almost without warning, around 6,000 years ago, in the fertile lands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, humanity witnessed one of the strangest leaps in all of history. Within a relatively short period of time, the Sumerians developed writing, mathematics, astronomy, agriculture, law, monumental architecture, irrigation systems, organized religion, and complex government. It was as though civilization itself had switched on overnight. Even more mysterious was the sophistication of their knowledge. The Sumerians used a base 60 mathematical system, the reason we still divide time into 60 seconds and 60 minutes today. They tracked planetary movements with remarkable accuracy. They mapped constellations. They built massive step temples called ziggurats aligned to celestial events. And they left behind thousands of clay tablets, tablets that survived buried beneath desert sands for millennia. When archaeologists first translated these writings in the 19th century, they were stunned by what they found, because many of the stories sounded strangely familiar. A great flood destroying humanity, a paradise garden, creation from clay, divine beings descending from the heavens. The Sumerians called these beings the Anunnaki. The term is often translated as those who came from the sky, or princely offspring. In Sumerian mythology, the Anunnaki were powerful entities associated with creation, kingship, cosmic order, and hidden knowledge. Some texts describe them teaching humanity agriculture and craftsmanship. Others portray them judging mankind after catastrophic floods. Over time, these stories evolved and spread into neighboring civilizations. Elements of Sumerian mythology eventually appeared in Babylonian religion, Hebrew traditions, and later mythologies throughout the ancient world. But in the 20th century, a controversial interpretation changed everything. Alternative researchers began arguing that the Anunnaki were not symbolic gods at all. They were real beings, advanced visitors, perhaps extraterrestrial. The most famous version of this theory claimed the Anunnaki came from a distant planet called Nibiru and arrived on Earth in humanity's distant past. According to the theory, they genetically modified early humans and accelerated civilization by sharing advanced knowledge. Mainstream scholars reject these claims completely. There is no accepted scientific evidence proving extraterrestrial contact in ancient history, and yet the theory refuses to disappear. Why? Because something about the ancient world genuinely feels incomplete. Too many civilizations appear carrying sophisticated knowledge with no clear developmental path. Too many ancient monuments challenge conventional assumptions about early engineering. Too many myths across cultures repeat similar themes of sky beings, catastrophic floods, and lost ages. And then there are the places hidden beneath the earth itself. Deep beneath central Turkey lies one of the most astonishing ancient discoveries ever made. Derinkuyu, an underground city descending more than 200 feet below the surface. At first it appeared to be a small network of caves, but as excavations continued, archaeologists realized the truth. This was an entire subterranean metropolis. Tunnels stretched for miles beneath the ground. Massive stone doors sealed passageways. Ventilation shafts carried fresh air deep underground. There were kitchens, storage rooms, schools, wells, chapels, living quarters, and defensive choke points designed to trap invaders. At its peak, Derinkuyu may have sheltered more than 20,000 people simultaneously, and nobody knows exactly who built it first. The earliest sections may date back thousands of years before Christ. Some historians believe the Hittites began the complex. Others argue it grew gradually over centuries. But one question remains difficult to answer. Why would ancient people create entire cities underground? Some researchers suggest protection from invasion. Others propose defense against climate catastrophe. And alternative theorists imagine something even more dramatic. A civilization hiding from devastation on the surface world. Perhaps from war, perhaps from cosmic disaster, perhaps from something humanity barely remembers. Because across many ancient traditions, there are references to previous worlds ending violently. The Hindu text describes cyclical ages destroyed and reborn repeatedly. Mayan cosmology speaks of earlier creations wiped away before the current age. Greek philosophers wrote about civilizations consumed by floods and fire. Even Plato's story of Atlantis describes an advanced society destroyed in a single catastrophic day and night. Modern science confirms that Earth's history contains devastating disasters capable of reshaping civilization entirely. Massive volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, solar storms, rapid climate shifts, mega floods at the end of the Ice Age. Around 12,000 years ago, the planet underwent dramatic environmental upheaval. Sea levels rose hundreds of feet as glaciers melted. Entire coastlines disappeared beneath the ocean. And that creates another disturbing possibility. If advanced prehistoric settlements once existed near ancient shorelines, many of them may now lie underwater, lost forever beneath the sea. Perhaps we have only uncovered fragments of humanity's true past because the majority of ancient coastal civilization now rests beyond reach at the bottom of the oceans. There are intriguing hints: submerged ruins near Japan, underwater stone formations near India, sunken structures off the coast of Cuba and the Mediterranean. Most mainstream archaeologists remain cautious about these discoveries, often attributing them to natural geological formations. But the mystery persists, especially when ancient maps enter the conversation. One of the most controversial is the Piri Reis map, created in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral using supposedly much older source material. Some researchers claim portions of the map depict Antarctica free from ice centuries before the continent was officially discovered. Mainstream historians strongly dispute this interpretation, yet the map remains strangely accurate in certain areas for its time. And controversies like this continue feeding the belief that fragments of forgotten geographical knowledge survived from civilizations long gone. Perhaps hidden within myths, maps, temples, and underground cities are pieces of a much larger puzzle. A puzzle humanity has barely begun to understand. And somewhere inside that puzzle remains one haunting possibility. That civilization may be far older and far stranger than we dare imagine. There is another mystery hidden beneath the sands of Egypt that continues to divide historians, engineers, and researchers more fiercely than almost any other ancient structure on Earth. The Great Pyramid of Giza. For more than 4,000 years, it has stood on the edge of the desert, aligned with astonishing precision to the cardinal directions of the planet. Not approximately, precisely. The error between the pyramid's alignment and true north is so small that many modern buildings constructed with advanced surveying equipment perform worse. How ancient Egyptians achieved this remains debated even today. The pyramid originally stood nearly 147 meters tall and contained an estimated 2.3 million stone blocks. Some weighed several tons. Others, especially those inside the king's chamber, reached up to 70 tons and were transported from quarries hundreds of kilometers away. And yet the structure was built with such precision that gaps between certain stones are thinner than a sheet of paper. Even stranger are the mathematical relationships hidden inside its dimensions. The ratio between the pyramid's perimeter and height closely approximates pi. The structure appears to encode astronomical and geophysical measurements connected to Earth itself. Some researchers argue these relationships are intentional, others believe they are coincidence. But the questions keep multiplying. How were the stones lifted? How was such alignment achieved without modern instruments? And perhaps most mysterious of all, why was it built in the first place? Officially, the Great Pyramid served as a tomb for Pharaoh Khufu. Yet unlike nearly every other Egyptian royal burial site, no decorated walls cover its interior. No elaborate funerary texts, no confirmed mummy, no treasures, no obvious burial symbolism inside the main chambers. Instead, the interior feels strangely functional, mathematical, engineered. Alternative theories propose radical possibilities. Some believe the pyramid functioned as an astronomical observatory. Others suggest it may have operated as an energy device utilizing resonance, vibration, or electromagnetic properties generated by the Earth itself. Certain researchers point to the pyramid's location near underground water channels and speculate that flowing water beneath the structure could have produced vibrations interacting with the limestone and granite chambers above. These ideas remain highly controversial and are rejected by mainstream archaeology. Yet even conventional engineers admit the pyramid displays extraordinary acoustic properties. Inside certain chambers, low-frequency sounds resonate powerfully. Specific tones can vibrate through the granite walls in strange ways. Experiments have shown that the king's chamber amplifies resonance at particular frequencies with remarkable efficiency. Could the ancient Egyptians have intentionally designed these effects? No one knows. But sound itself may have played a far greater role in ancient technology than modern historians once believed. Across the world, ancient structures repeatedly display unusual acoustic behavior. At Chichen Itza in Mexico, a clap near the pyramid staircase produces an echo resembling the chirp of the sacred Quetzal bird. In Malta's Hypogeum underground temple, specific vocal frequencies resonate through chambers in ways that physically affect the human body. At Newgrange in Ireland, carefully constructed passageways channel both sunlight and sound with astonishing precision. And in Peru, some megalithic sites appear capable of transmitting vibrations across stone surfaces unexpectedly well. Why were ancient civilizations so obsessed with resonance? Perhaps because they understood something we are only beginning to rediscover. That sound is not merely heard, it is physical force. Modern science already uses acoustic levitation to move tiny objects using sound waves. Powerful frequencies can shatter glass, influence matter, and create standing wave patterns inside liquids and solids. Some speculative researchers wonder whether ancient builders may have explored primitive forms of acoustic engineering far beyond what we assume possible. Could vibration have assisted in moving massive stones? Mainstream science says no evidence supports this, yet the legends persist. Tibetan stories speak of monks lifting stones with coordinated sound. Andean myths describe sacred chants moving rock like softened clay. Egyptian traditions mention divine words carrying creative power itself. Perhaps these are merely symbolic stories, or perhaps they preserve distant echoes of forgotten experiments with resonance and frequency. Because the deeper we look into ancient civilizations, the more one pattern continues appearing. Knowledge hidden inside myth, science disguised as religion, technology wrapped in symbolism. Ancient priests were often astronomers, mathematicians, architects, and engineers simultaneously. In many civilizations, sacred knowledge and scientific knowledge were never separated the way they are today. To understand the cosmos was to understand the divine, and nowhere is that connection more apparent than in the stars themselves. Nearly every major ancient civilization watched the heavens obsessively. The Egyptians aligned monuments to Orion. The Maya tracked Venus with astonishing accuracy. The Sumerians mapped planetary cycles. The Nabateans carved entire cities according to solar alignments. Even Stonehenge appears designed as a giant astronomical calendar. Why? Because ancient people believed the sky carried messages, warnings, cycles, patterns governing life itself. And perhaps they were not entirely wrong. Modern civilization also depends on the heavens more than most people realize. Satellites guide navigation, communication, banking systems, weather prediction, military defense, and global infrastructure. A sufficiently powerful solar storm striking Earth today could cripple civilization within hours. In 1859, a massive solar event known as the Carrington event caused telegraph systems to burst into flames across Europe and North America. If a similar event happened now, experts believe it could collapse electrical grids worldwide. Ancient cultures feared the sky because they understood humanity's vulnerability to cosmic forces. Perhaps they learned that lesson through catastrophe. Perhaps their myths about floods, fire from heaven, and collapsing worlds preserved memories of real disasters witnessed long ago. And maybe somewhere in those ancient warnings lies a message modern civilization has forgotten, that no empire lasts forever, no technology is permanent, and no civilization is immune to collapse, not even ours. Perhaps the most dangerous illusion every civilization believes is this, that collapse only happens to others. The Romans believed their empire would last forever. The Maya believed their cities would never fall silent. The builders of Babylon, the pharaohs of Egypt, the kings of Sumer, all of them lived beneath the same certainty modern humanity carries today, that their world was permanent, and yet now their civilizations survive mostly as fragments buried beneath sand and stone. Broken statues, collapsed temples, unreadable languages, dust. History has erased entire worlds before, and it can do so again. This realization changes the way we look at ancient technology, because maybe the greatest mystery is not how advanced ancient civilizations became, but how completely they disappeared afterward. Take the Library of Alexandria. Founded in ancient Egypt during the Ptolemaic period, it was said to contain hundreds of thousands of scrolls gathered from across the known world. Mathematics, astronomy, engineering, geography, medicine, philosophy, knowledge accumulated over centuries. Then it vanished, destroyed gradually through wars, political conflict, religious upheaval, and fire. We often imagine lost knowledge as magical secrets hidden deliberately from humanity. But sometimes knowledge disappears for a much simpler reason. The people who understood it die. And when enough generations pass, rebuilding becomes almost impossible. Imagine trying to recreate modern civilization from scratch with no electricity, no internet, no factories, and only fragments of textbooks surviving. How many centuries would it take? Could we even rebuild certain technologies at all? Ancient societies face the same problem. Once trade routes collapsed and empires fragmented, specialized knowledge disappeared quickly. Metallurgy, engineering, astronomy, navigation, all depended on stable networks of skilled individuals passing information forward. Break the chain long enough and civilization forgets. This may explain why certain ancient achievements appear isolated in history, not because they were impossible, but because the continuity of knowledge was shattered. And yet, some mysteries still feel harder to explain, because certain ancient structures seem almost intentionally designed to survive catastrophe. The Great Pyramid endures after 4,000 years. Roman harbors resist the ocean itself. Underground cities remain hidden beneath mountains. Megalithic walls survive earthquakes that destroy modern buildings nearby. It is as though ancient builders expected time itself to attack their creations. Perhaps they built for eternity because they had already witnessed destruction before. There are intriguing signs that many ancient cultures were deeply concerned with cyclical catastrophe. The Maya tracked enormous cycles of time. Hindu cosmology describes repeating ages called yugas, where civilizations rise and fall endlessly across vast spans of history. The Greeks spoke of successive ages of man destroyed by disaster and moral decline. Even Plato's Atlantis may symbolize collective memory of coastal civilizations swallowed by rising seas after the Ice Age. Modern geology confirms that around the end of the last ice age, sea levels rose dramatically as glaciers melted. Entire coastal regions disappeared beneath water worldwide. And this matters because ancient civilizations almost always formed near coastlines and rivers. If advanced settlements existed before the floods, many would now rest underwater, beyond excavation, beyond recovery. Perhaps humanity has only uncovered the mountaintops of its own forgotten past. There are strange underwater discoveries that continue fueling speculation. Near Yaguni in Japan lies a massive submerged stone formation with sharp angles and terrace-like structures. Some researchers insist it is natural geology. Others believe it may be remnants of an ancient human-made complex submerged after rising seas. Off the coast of India, sonar scans revealed underwater formations near the Gulf of Kambat that some interpreted as traces of an ancient city. The findings remain controversial. Near Cuba, deep-sea scans once detected geometric formations on the ocean floor resembling pyramidal structures. Mainstream experts remain skeptical due to limited evidence. Still, the idea persists that entire chapters of human civilization may now lie hidden beneath the oceans. And if that is true, then our understanding of history could be profoundly incomplete, because archaeology only studies what survives, and survival is random. Wood rots, metal corrodes, paper burns, stone sinks. Time destroys almost everything eventually, which means humanity may be reconstructing its past from scattered fragments, while most of the story remains missing. Perhaps future discoveries will completely rewrite history once again. They already have before. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey shocked archaeologists when it was uncovered in the 1990s. Massive stone pillars arranged in circular enclosures dated back over 11,000 years. Older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids, older than what historians believe complex civilization should have been capable of producing. According to older theories, organized religion and monumental architecture emerged only after agriculture. Göbekli Tepe reversed that assumption entirely. Hunter-gatherers built massive ceremonial structures before farming fully developed. One discovery changed the timeline of civilization itself, and that is what makes ancient mysteries so powerful. Every time humanity believes it fully understands history, another discovery appears, another impossible ruin, another forgotten mechanism, another buried city, another question. Perhaps somewhere beneath desert sands or deep beneath the sea lies evidence that will one day force humanity to completely rethink its origins. Or perhaps the truth is even stranger. Perhaps civilization is far older than we realize, not because aliens visited Earth, but because human beings themselves are capable of extraordinary achievements whenever knowledge survives long enough to accumulate. Maybe the ancients were not magical. Maybe they were simply brilliant in ways we no longer understand. And perhaps that thought is more humbling than any myth about gods descending from the sky, because it means humanity may have already reached incredible heights before and forgotten them all. Maybe that is why ancient ruins affect us so deeply, not simply because they are old, but because they force us to confront a possibility modern civilization rarely considers, that progress is not guaranteed, that history is not linear, and that intelligence alone does not protect a civilization from disappearance. Tonight we explored impossible stones in the Andes, machines recovered from ancient shipwrecks, mysterious metals, underground cities, forgotten weapons, and stories of beings descending from the stars. But beneath every mystery runs the same quiet warning. Everything humanity builds is temporary. Even now, modern civilization exists on an invisible foundation most people never think about. Electricity, satellites, data centers, global communication networks, supply chains stretching across continents. If those systems failed long enough, much of what we know could vanish within generations. Books decay, servers fail, languages evolve, knowledge fragments. And one day, perhaps thousands of years from now, future archaeologists may stand among the ruins of our own world, asking questions eerily similar to ours. How did they build these towers? How did they communicate instantly across the planet? How did they travel into space? Why did they disappear? Maybe some future civilization will discover fragments of smartphones buried beneath sediment and mistake them for ritual objects. Perhaps shattered satellites will be interpreted as relics of forgotten gods. History transforms reality into myth surprisingly quickly. Even today, many events only a few thousand years old already blur into legend. So imagine what happens over 10,000 years, 20,000, 50,000. Perhaps ancient myths survive because stories endure longer than facts. People forget measurements, they forget formulas, but they remember symbols, floods, sky beings, fire from heaven, great towers, fallen worlds. The details fade while the emotional memory survives. And maybe somewhere within those stories lies a distorted memory of humanity's deepest trauma, the collapse of worlds that existed before ours. This possibility becomes especially unsettling when we remember that modern humans have existed for roughly 300,000 years. Yet recorded history covers only about 5,000. That means over 98% of human existence remains largely unknown. A vast darkness stretches behind the earliest written records. We know astonishingly little about what may have happened during those immense spans of time. Most archaeologists believe humans during those eras lived primarily as hunter-gatherers. And perhaps they are correct. But discoveries continue complicating the picture. Göbekli Tepe, ancient astronomical alignments, sophisticated prehistoric carvings, megalithic engineering that still challenges explanation. Again and again, the ancient world proves more advanced than expected. Not necessarily because of supernatural intervention, but because humanity itself may be far older, more resilient, and more capable than we once believed. And perhaps the true lesson hidden inside these mysteries is not about aliens or lost super civilizations at all. Perhaps it is about humility. Modern civilization often assumes itself to be the pinnacle of history, but the ruins of the ancient world whisper a different message. Others once felt the same certainty. Others once believed their knowledge would endure forever. And now their greatest achievements survive only as puzzles, fragments, mysteries discussed in documentaries late at night while the rest of the world sleeps. There is something strangely beautiful about that. The idea that humanity leaves echoes behind, that even after collapse, curiosity survives, questions survive, wonder survives, a child staring at the stars survives. And perhaps that curiosity is the real inheritance connecting us to the ancient world. The same curiosity that led Sumerian priests to map the heavens. The same curiosity that drove Egyptian builders to align monuments with stars. The same curiosity that inspired Greek inventors to create impossible machines. The same curiosity that pushed forgotten engineers to carve mountains, forge legendary metals, and construct cities beneath the earth. Across thousands of years, civilizations rise and vanish, but curiosity remains. Tonight we walk through ruins scattered across the earth, searching for traces of lost knowledge. Some mysteries may eventually be solved. Others may remain unanswered forever. And perhaps that is exactly how it should be. Because mystery gives history its power. It reminds us that the world is still larger, older, and stranger than we fully understand. As the night grows quiet and the ancient world fades back into darkness, imagine for a moment all the forgotten stories still hidden beneath oceans, deserts, glaciers, and jungles. Entire civilizations waiting silently beneath the earth, Artifacts no human eyes have seen for thousands of years. Secrets untouched since the dawn of history. And somewhere out there tonight, beneath the sand, beneath the sea, or buried deep beneath forgotten mountains, the next discovery may already be waiting. And perhaps somewhere in the future, long after our own civilization has faded into ruins, another generation will sit in darkness asking the same questions we asked tonight. Who came before us? What did they know? And why did they disappear? Because the cycle never truly ends. Civilizations rise from uncertainty. They build monuments to permanence. They master the world around them. They believe themselves invincible. Then slowly, quietly, something changes. Trade weakens. Climate shifts. Wars spread. Knowledge fragments. And eventually the impossible happens. The world people once considered eternal becomes memory. This has happened again and again throughout human history. The Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BCE erased entire kingdoms across the Mediterranean almost simultaneously. Powerful civilizations vanished within decades. Writing systems disappeared. International trade collapsed. Cities burned and were abandoned. For centuries afterward, humanity entered a dark age where much previous knowledge was lost. To this day, historians still debate exactly what caused it. Drought, earthquakes, invasion, economic collapse, perhaps all of them together. And if an interconnected world collapsed once before, could it happen again? The ancient world constantly reminds us how fragile complexity truly is. A single failed harvest could topple kingdoms. A plague could erase generations of knowledge. A natural disaster could bury entire cities forever. Modern civilization feels secure because our systems are vast and technologically advanced. Yet that complexity also creates vulnerability. The more interconnected a civilization becomes, the more catastrophic its collapse can be. Perhaps ancient peoples understood this better than we do. Perhaps that is why they built in stone. Why they aligned monuments to eternal stars instead of temporary rulers. Why so many myths focus not on endless progress, but on cycles, creation, destruction, rebirth, again and again. The Hindu yugas describe vast repeating ages of civilization and collapse, stretching across immense spans of time. The Stoic philosophers of Greece believed the universe itself passed through endless cycles of destruction and renewal. Even the ancient Egyptians viewed time not as a straight line, but as recurring cosmic order struggling against chaos. Maybe humanity instinctively senses this truth, that nothing lasts forever. And perhaps that realization explains why ancient ruins feel almost haunting at night. When the wind moves through broken temples and abandoned cities under moonlight, it becomes easier to imagine the people who once stood there, believing their world would never end. Children once played beneath those same stars. Priests once climbed those same staircases carrying fire into dark sanctuaries. Builders once touched those same stones with hands now turned to dust. Entire lives unfolded inside civilizations that modern humanity barely remembers. And one day the same may happen to us. Perhaps future generations will walk through the ruins of our own cities with the same mixture of awe and confusion we feel standing before the pyramids or the temples of the Maya. Maybe they too will invent theories. Maybe they will misunderstand us completely. Maybe they will wonder whether our technologies were gifts from gods. Because when knowledge disappears, mystery takes its place. And mystery has always surrounded the ancient world, from the silent Moai staring across the Pacific, to the underground cities hidden beneath Turkey, to the impossible precision of megalithic walls, to the forgotten machines recovered from the ocean floor. The past continues whispering that humanity's story is far from complete. There are still buried cities no one has uncovered, still untranslated texts resting in museum vaults, still caves hidden beneath mountains, still ruins sleeping beneath jungles so dense no satellite has fully mapped them. And beneath the oceans, where rising seas swallowed ancient coastlines thousands of years ago, there may rest entire chapters of history humanity has never seen. Perhaps someday those discoveries will change everything. Or perhaps the greatest value of ancient mysteries lies not in solving them completely, but in reminding us to remain curious, to question, to explore, to admit how much we still do not know. Because the unknown has always driven humanity forward. The same force that made ancient astronomers stare into the heavens, that inspired builders to raise impossible monuments, that pushed explorers across oceans, still lives inside us now. Curiosity survives every collapse. Wonder survives every empire. And maybe that is the true legacy passed down from the ancient world. Not secret technologies, not lost weapons, not hidden alien knowledge, but the refusal to stop searching for answers. So tonight, as the world grows quiet and sleep slowly approaches, remember this: the ancient world is not dead. It still speaks through ruins, myths, stars, and unanswered questions. And somewhere tonight, buried beneath layers of earth or hidden beneath dark ocean waters, another forgotten secret may already be waiting for humanity to find it. Somewhere beneath the modern world, the ancient past is still waiting, buried beneath deserts untouched for thousands of years, hidden beneath glaciers slowly melting in silence, resting beneath dense jungle canopies where entire cities remain invisible from the ground, and deep beneath the oceans, where ancient coastlines disappeared after the last ice age. The Earth is still keeping secrets. Even now, satellites scanning remote regions continue discovering structures nobody expected to find. In Cambodia, laser mapping technology revealed entire hidden cities surrounding Angkor Wat beneath thick jungle vegetation. In the Amazon rainforest, archaeologists uncovered massive geometric earthworks invisible from ground level for centuries. Every new discovery carries the same unsettling implication. Ancient humanity was far more organized, connected, and sophisticated than we once believed. And perhaps we have only uncovered a tiny fraction of the full story, because time destroys evidence unevenly. Stone survives, metal sometimes survives, but wood disappears, textiles disappear, paper disappears. Entire civilizations built primarily from organic materials could vanish almost completely after enough centuries pass. Imagine a modern city abandoned for 10,000 years. Steel would corrode, concrete would crack, glass would shatter, forests would reclaim streets. Eventually, only fragments would remain buried beneath layers of sediment. Now imagine trying to reconstruct that civilization from scattered ruins. How much would future archaeologists misunderstand? Probably far more than we would like to admit. Perhaps the same is true for the ancient world. Maybe what we call mystery is simply the result of incomplete evidence. But even incomplete evidence can be astonishing. Consider the Nazca lines of Peru. Gigantic geometric figures carved into the desert floor so enormous they can only truly be seen from high above the ground. Some stretch for miles across the landscape. Perfectly straight lines, spirals, animals, and complex patterns created over 1,000 years ago. How did the Nazca people design them with such scale and accuracy without aerial perspective? Official explanations suggest simple surveying techniques using ropes and wooden stakes, and experiments have shown this is indeed possible. Yet the images remain eerie when viewed from the sky, almost as though they were meant to be seen from above. Then there are the crystal skulls, the giant Olmec heads, the mysterious Longyu caves in China, carved from solid rock with no historical records explaining who built them or why. Again and again, the ancient world presents anomalies. Most eventually receive plausible explanations. Some do not, and perhaps that uncertainty is what keeps these mysteries alive generation after generation. Because human beings are drawn toward the unknown. toward the possibility that something extraordinary still waits hidden beyond the edges of accepted history. Sometimes that search leads to pseudoscience and exaggeration, but sometimes it leads to genuine discovery. After all, many things once dismissed as impossible eventually proved real. The ancient city of Troy, the existence of giant prehistoric floods, the sophistication of the Maya, the engineering complexity of the Antikythera Mechanism. History has repeatedly humbled humanity, and it may do so again. Perhaps one day archaeologists will uncover evidence that completely transforms our understanding of early civilization. Or perhaps the deeper truth is already visible, that human beings, even in the distant past, were capable of brilliance far beyond what modern arrogance often assumes. Maybe ancient people were not primitive minds waiting to become intelligent. Maybe they were observers of nature operating within entirely different systems of knowledge. They watched the stars every night without light pollution. They understood seasons intimately because survival depended on it. They developed mathematics, architecture, navigation, and engineering through centuries of patient observation. And because their survival depended directly on understanding the natural world, perhaps they noticed patterns modern civilization ignores. Patterns in sound, in stone, in water, in the sky. The ancients may not have possessed smartphones or computers, but intelligence takes many forms, and wisdom does not always move forward through history. Sometimes it disappears. Sometimes entire ways of understanding reality vanish with the people who carried them. That possibility may be the most haunting idea of all. Not that aliens built the pyramids, not that gods walked among humanity, but that human civilization itself may have forgotten incredible things multiple times before. As the night deepens and the ancient world drifts once more into silence, the ruins remain where they have always been. Watching, waiting. Stone monuments beneath moonlight, collapsed temples buried beneath sand, ancient mechanisms sleeping in museum glass, untranslated texts resting in darkness, questions without final answers, and perhaps somewhere tonight, in some forgotten corner of the earth, no one has fully explored yet. Another impossible discovery is waiting patiently beneath the ground, waiting for humanity to find it, waiting to remind us once again how little we truly know about our own past. And maybe that is the final truth hidden inside every ancient mystery. Not that the past was magical, but that humanity has always been far more extraordinary than it realizes. For thousands of years, people looked at ancient ruins and underestimated the minds that created them. Modern civilization often assumes intelligence belongs primarily to the present, that technology automatically makes us wiser than those who came before. But the ruins say otherwise. They remind us that intelligence can carve mountains, that patience can align monuments to stars with astonishing precision, that observation alone can produce mathematics, calendars, and engineering powerful enough to survive thousands of years. And perhaps most importantly, they remind us that human beings have always searched for meaning beneath the stars. The same stars shining above the pyramids still shine above us tonight. The same constellations watched by Sumerian astronomers drift silently across the sky. The same moon illuminating forgotten temples now reflects across modern cities glowing with electric light. Civilizations change. The sky remains. Maybe that is why ancient people built so many monuments aligned to celestial movements. Not only to measure time, but to connect themselves to something eternal. Because kingdoms collapse, languages vanish, technology fades, but the stars continue. And perhaps that continuity gave ancient civilizations comfort in uncertain worlds. A reminder that even when human history fractures, the cosmos endures. There is something deeply humbling about standing among ruins older than recorded memory. The stones do not care about empires. They outlive politics, wars, religions, and generations. And they simply remain, silent witnesses to humanity's endless cycle of creation and collapse. Perhaps that is why so many ancient sites feel strangely emotional, even to modern visitors. People travel across the world to stand before the pyramids, Machu Picchu, Stonehenge, Petra, Angkor Wat, or the statues of Easter Island, not merely because they are historical locations, but because they awaken something ancient inside us. A sense of wonder, a feeling that humanity is part of a much larger story, stretching backward through time far beyond what we fully understand. And maybe that feeling matters, because modern life often leaves little room for mystery. Everything is measured, categorized, explained. Yet the ancient world reminds us that mystery still exists. There are still unanswered questions, still forgotten places, still secrets sleeping beneath the earth, and perhaps humanity needs mystery, not to abandon science or reason, but to remain curious, to keep searching, to remember that certainty can sometimes blind us more than ignorance. The greatest discoveries in history often began when someone questioned what everyone else assumed was impossible. Maybe that spirit of curiosity is the true inheritance passed down from the ancient world. Not hidden alien technology, not supernatural powers, but the refusal to stop wondering, the refusal to stop exploring, the refusal to accept that humanity already knows everything important about its own existence. Because we do not even close. There are still languages no one can translate, ancient scripts resting silently in museum archives. There are buried structures hidden beneath deserts, visible only through satellite scans. There are submerged coastlines few divers have ever explored. There are caves sealed for thousands of years. And somewhere beneath all of it may lie discoveries capable of rewriting history once again. Or perhaps the answers will remain hidden forever. Perhaps some mysteries are meant to survive, to remind us that the world is still vast, still ancient, still filled with shadows beyond the reach of certainty. Tonight we traveled through lost civilizations, impossible technologies, forgotten catastrophes, and legends of beings descending from the heavens. Some of these mysteries may one day be solved completely. Others may remain unanswered for as long as humanity exists. But maybe that uncertainty is not something to fear. Maybe it is something beautiful, because as long as mysteries remain, human curiosity remains alive too. And long after empires fall, long after modern cities crumble into ruins, long after our own civilization becomes another forgotten chapter buried beneath layers of time, someone, somewhere, will still look up at the stars and wonder who came before them. Good night. Far out beyond the noise of modern cities, beyond highways, satellites, and glowing screens, the ancient world still waits in silence. In deserts where winds erase footprints within minutes, in jungles where roots slowly consume forgotten temples stone by stone, in frozen mountains where ice seals away entire chapters of history beneath layers of time. Humanity often speaks about the past as though it is finished, but the past is not finished. It is still being uncovered. Every year, archaeologists discover something that should not exist according to the timelines we once trusted. A buried city, a forgotten language, an impossible mechanism, a structure older than civilization was supposed to be. Again and again, history changes. And perhaps that should make us careful about certainty. Because for most of human existence, people believed the world ended at the horizon. They believed the stars were unreachable lights fixed to a heavenly dome. They believed entire continents did not exist. Human understanding has always been temporary. Perhaps ours is temporary too. One day, future discoveries may reveal that ancient civilizations possess knowledge we have not even imagined yet. Or perhaps we will learn that the ancients achieved incredible things through patience, cooperation, observation, and generations of accumulated skill rather than lost super technology. Either possibility is astonishing, because both reveal the same truth. Humanity is capable of extraordinary things. Sometimes we forget that. Modern civilization moves so quickly that people often mistake convenience for superiority. We assume older cultures were less intelligent simply because they lived differently. But intelligence shaped the pyramids. Intelligence mapped the heavens without telescopes. Intelligence carved temples into mountainsides and aligned monuments to solstices with breathtaking precision. And intelligence survives in every ancient ruin still standing beneath the stars tonight. Perhaps that is why ancient mysteries feel strangely personal. When we look at ruins, we are not simply looking at dead civilizations. We are looking at ourselves, at human beings struggling against time, trying to leave something behind, trying to create meaning before the darkness eventually returns. The builders of ancient monuments likely feared being forgotten just as we do now. And in a strange way, they succeeded, because thousands of years later, humanity still whispers their names: Egypt, Sumer, Maya, Inca, Babylon, Atlantis. The stories survive even when certainty does not. Maybe that is enough. Maybe immortality was never about preserving every fact or every answer. Maybe it was about preserving wonder, and wonder still survives. It survives whenever someone stands before ancient ruins and feels awe. Whenever a child looks at the stars and asks questions. Whenever humanity searches beneath the earth, hoping to understand who came before us. Curiosity is older than civilization itself, older than language, older perhaps than memory. And as long as curiosity survives, the ancient world is never truly gone. Because every mystery still waiting beneath the earth continues speaking quietly across time, through broken pillars, through silent temples, through shattered statues staring endlessly toward forgotten horizons. And maybe somewhere tonight, beneath the ocean floor, or hidden deep within unexplored caves, there rests a discovery capable of changing everything we think we know about human history. A final forgotten city, a buried library, a machine sleeping beneath stone, or perhaps simply another reminder that the world remains larger and stranger than we imagine. As sleep slowly arrives and the ancient world fades once more into darkness, remember this: humanity's story is still unfinished. The ruins are still whispering, and the next great mystery may already be waiting for someone curious enough to uncover it. And now, as the night grows deeper and the world around you becomes quiet, the ancient past slowly fades back into darkness. The ruins remain where they have always been, silent beneath moonlight, waiting beneath sand, jungle, ice, and ocean. The pyramids still watch the desert horizon exactly as they did thousands of years ago. The statues of Easter Island still stare endlessly across the Pacific. Deep underground, forgotten tunnels still sleep beneath mountains where entire civilizations once hid from dangers we may never fully understand. And above all of them, the stars remain. The same stars that guided Sumerian priests across the first cities. The same stars ancient Egyptian astronomers watched from temple rooftops beside the Nile. The same stars reflected in the obsidian mirrors of forgotten shamans and carved into the calendars of civilizations long turned to dust. Humanity changes, empires rise, empires collapse, but the sky endures. Perhaps that is why ancient people looked upward so often, not because they were primitive, but because they understood something modern civilization sometimes forgets: that we are small, small beneath time, small beneath history, small beneath the vast silence of the cosmos. And yet, despite that smallness, humanity continues searching, searching for meaning, searching for answers, searching for traces of those who came before us. Maybe that search itself is what connects every civilization across time. The builders of megaliths, the astronomers of Babylon, the philosophers of Greece, the engineers of Rome, the forgotten kings buried beneath collapsed cities. All of them looked at the world and asked the same questions we still ask now. Who are we? Where did we come from? And what existed before us? Perhaps no final answer will ever come. Perhaps the ancient world will always keep some of its secrets hidden, because mystery is part of what makes humanity dream. Without mystery, there is no wonder. Without wonder, there is no exploration. And without exploration, civilization stops moving forward. So maybe the unanswered questions matter just as much as the answers themselves. Maybe the ruins were never meant to explain everything. Maybe they exist to remind us that history is deeper than certainty, that the world is older than memory, and that somewhere beyond everything we currently understand, more discoveries are still waiting. Tonight we traveled through forgotten temples, impossible monuments, ancient machines, lost civilizations, and legends written before recorded history began. Some stories may have been myth. Some may have contained fragments of truth, and some mysteries may remain unsolved forever. But together they reveal something important. Humanity has always been extraordinary, fragile, curious, creative, and endlessly drawn toward the unknown. Even after collapse, even after disaster, even after entire worlds disappear beneath time, curiosity survives. Wonder survives. The desire to understand survives. And perhaps that is the true legacy of every ancient civilization. Not their weapons, not their gold, not even their monuments, but the questions they left behind. Questions still echoing softly through ruins under moonlight tonight. As sleep slowly takes hold and the ancient world drifts farther away, imagine the countless forgotten stories still hidden beneath the earth. Buried cities no one has uncovered, silent chambers sealed for thousands of years, ancient libraries reduced to dust before anyone could read them, artifacts resting beneath dark oceans where sunlight no longer reaches. And somewhere, perhaps at this very moment, the next great discovery waits patiently in silence, waiting for someone curious enough to find it, waiting to remind humanity once again that our story is far older, far stranger, and far more mysterious than we have ever imagined. Good night.